The last and very happy phase of my work life was working with animals. And I really had a wonderful experience and a great career and a wonderful business. But it brought to mind some things that are really important now. And that is the understanding of the skills necessary to work with animals and what it takes to connect with and have a complementary relationship with an animal. How do you do that? How do you form that kind of cooperation that's necessary to form a bond between a human and an animal? So I spent well over a decade doing that, and it was a natural thing. I was just good at it and lucky to be able to make the connections to have a really fun career. And I never got bit. So that's a thing to say in itself. But over the last little bit, I've been thinking, well, how did that happen? How did I develop those skills to be able to understand how to interact with and be successful with animals, to form cooperative relationships? What was that about? And so I've been really spending a lot of time with that based on some sort of queries by friends of, what was that like to be able to do that? And I've spent more and more time with it, and I've begun to understand that there's some very basic things about who we are as creatures, as beings, that are very important to understand to unlock these kinds of secrets. Well, they're not really secrets as such. They're mysteries, probably a better thing. And so where does that start? Where do we get our beginning place in this? And of course, it's creation. It's the fact that we are creatures created by God. Then our createdness, our creatureness, was interrupted a little bit by a maker, very different than the creator. And the maker seduced us as creatures. And we shifted our concentrations and our wantings and our desires. And as a result, we were remade. Remade in the image of a maker, who in that remaking of us instilled in us a need to worship that maker, to sacrifice to that maker, to do many things, to be afraid of the maker. And that's a fascinating thing, because what it means is that our creatureness was modified. And so we became humans. We were no longer creatures of God. We were humans. And with all of that genetic modification, with that genetic manipulation, we changed the way we were. Our physical nature changed. But yet, not every aspect of our physical nature was changing. There were some aspects of it that were available to us, that were still present. And what I mean is that it's our natural self, our animality, our creature self, our holy animality. So I want to use that as a place to create some distinctions that are really important. The difference between holy animality and bestiality, becoming the beast, becoming the holy animal or the beast. So I've been thinking a lot about my career working with animals and that success, that joy that came from that. And I've been thinking about, well, what does that mean for the state of being for me, of me as a creature? And what I've been concluding is that there's a big darn difference between being a human being made in the image of a maker and a creature of God, what are the talents and what are the skills? And what did I learn working with dogs mostly about how to begin to establish that cooperative relationship? And that's what it is. It's a cooperative relationship. That's the essence of animals and their groupings. It is not this kind of weird alpha thing, this pinnacle stuff. It's just pack leader. It's just hooey. It's always been hooey. What it's about is cooperative relationships. How do you form a bond with the animal that you're working with, and so that you can cooperate with one another? That's what makes for success, not dominance. So I've been thinking more and more about that. And what does that mean for me to continue in my development of forming bonds and cooperative relationships? Well, what it means is that the aspect of who I am that's the most important is my creatureness, is my animality, is my holy animality. There's a sacred animality here that's never been lost, and that we can aspire to reacquire. So when people say that they are wanting to understand how to be healers or energy workers or connect or develop all of these sort of skills of Reiki and all this stuff, is just a cornucopia of that stuff out there running around. And I don't think that people understand really where all that comes from. Where does that stuff get garnered? How do you acquire it? What's going on with it? Well, what it is in my mind, in my own experience, is that it is to be a return to our creatureness. That is the basis for our acquisition of these kinds of skills and talents. That's what it is to learn how to be sensitive and connecting and cooperative in the context of our animality, our holy animality. And if you start to think about all of the symbols that are represented in that, whether it be doves or donkeys or many, many other symbols, lions, eagles, think about them. Those are the things which are the essence of our creatureness. They are a part of us. And we as creatures have many, many, many things that have been covered up by our humanity. The Maker has made it so that we do not have access to our creatureness. And the Makers want to be worshipped and sacrificed to and feared. And it is the return to our animality, our holy animality, that is the key to the restoration of who we are as creatures in the divine image. And I think that that's what Yeshua was showing us, that he came as a divine creature. And he told us very clearly how to escape from the tentacles of the makers, the Elohims and the Yahwehs and the Ishtars and the Baals. How do we escape from them? Well, what it is to reclaim our animality is to, number one, do not eat meat sacrificed to idols. No food sacrificed to idols. And the other is predatory sexuality. Don't do that. To expand that we don't sacrifice to idols anymore. Most of us do. What we do in a way. Think about when you go to the food store. Think about the food you pick, the marketing, the imagery of it, the wanting, the desire, all of the things that make that box of whatever it is you buy your idol. You're idolizing that stuff because of your susceptibility to marketing. And in a way, you are idolizing your food. In a sense, you are sacrificing that food to yourself, to your personality. And your personality, in my understanding, is the pathway to bestiality. That is the pathway to beast. Those are the prowling beasts that roam our streets. They are runaway, engorged personalities. So we step out of our personality and we move into animality, which is our divine connection. So if you want to boost your powers of perception, think of the powers of perception of a panther or a hawk. Think of what they can perceive and see day and night. Where are we? So it is my work to then reintegrate myself as a creature. So last night I had a wonderful experience. I was getting ready to do this work and I woke up way late at night, as I do sometimes, and so much of my meditation is night work. And I went outside and the stars were shining so bright, and I was so immersed in that starlight and moonlight, and the temperature was just gloriously crisp, and I really felt alive. I felt absolutely alive. That was so good. And that's what it is, that connection to the natural world. And we instinctively long for it. You know, I remember in my earlier days, the back to the land cry, and there's so many things like that in diets and other things. But think about the validity of that. Think about how important that is to reclaim the wildness of who we are, the wilderness that is our portion. That wilderness experience is really vital for us all. And the beauty of the wilderness is another excursion into divinity as we come to grips with beauty in the context of being a creature, not as being a human, being made. So it's an escape from being made. That is the restoration that Yeshua brought to us. He said, don't eat meat sacrificed or food sacrificed to idols, whether it's grain or doves or whatever. Don't eat that stuff and stop being a sexual predator. Stop flaunting yourself and or engorging yourself with, your own passions and prides. Whatever your proclivities are, set them down. Set them down to become a creature in the divine sense. So what I'm also saying is that a lot of the religiosity that has occurred in the history of humankind comes to us from those who made us. They want that religiosity. Yeshua did not endorse religiosity. He came to fulfill the law, which is exactly what he did, but he did not reinstitute religiosity or institutional theology. That is not what he did. I mean, I can't find it. I wonder. So that is my meditation for today, to begin to explore our divinity as creatures, to develop our skills as creatures, to develop in ways where we rediscover our animality in a holy way, and think of the creatures that are representative of that holy animality. So it's a way to go ahead and move aside from some of the preconceived notions about who we are, because those come from the Maker. And they are the things that turn us into humans. And I am saying, my gosh, let's stop doing that. Let's become the creatures of God, the divine beings who were created in the image of God. And let's not return to the idolizing of our makers, who usurped us, who tricked us. And, we fell for it, okay. So, but now's the time not to fall for it anymore. to stop falling for it. That is over. And that's what Yeshua brought to us, the end of that. The end of our humanity, as it were. The beginning of our divinity. As creatures of God. So develop your sensitivities. Spend time outside. Go outside and breathe the fresh air. Smell flowers. Connect with your animality. Get close to earth. Get close to your own essence. Because that's where your connection will be. That's where my connection is. I felt it. I felt it in the simple synchronicities that occur every day. And that way to meet and greet. You know, when you see animals meet for the first time, what do? Well, they have that little sniffing stuff and they have their little rituals. And it's important to recognize the gaze and the posture and the pose. And to a certain degree, the stagecraft of each particular species. And that's what we need to reinstitute in our lives. The pose and posture and stagecraft and voice necessary to establish communications, to be beautiful, and to adorn ourselves in ways that are appropriate to our divine animality. How will you look? What jewelry will you wear? What gems will adorn who you are? Those are the things that I think are interesting. The adornment of gems and beauty. Man, those are the things that spark my imagination. And that's what I'm bringing to you today is a long-winded imagination. This is what gets me up at 3 o'clock in the morning. And I sit outside and stare at the stars. My gosh, that's so glorious. So I pass this on to you to join me in a rediscovery of our animality, our divinity, which comes as holy beings in the divine creation. Amen.